Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Glenorchy City Council on Monday, 26th of September 2022. I'm Beck Thomas, Mayor of Glenorchy and Chairperson of tonight's council meeting, and I'd like to start by acknowledging the Palawa people as the traditional owners and continuing custodians of this land on which we meet, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. Before we start tonight's meeting agenda, I'd like to welcome Pastor Les Batchelor from the Montrose Presbyterian Church to start our meeting in prayer, and please be upstanding if you welcome, Les.
Let's pray. Almighty God, Heavenly Father, we thank you for our nation to which we belong and for all that is good in its life. Help us to preserve our national heritage for the generation to come and make us a blessing to others. We thank you for the people of this city. Help the councillors to use the authority you have entrusted to them. Help them to follow the ways of truth and justice, that we may enjoy true prosperity in this city. Give them wisdom and discernment in all the business of this meeting this evening, so that we may be aware of your guidance and follow your leading with confidence. Through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor Batchelor. Thank you for coming along. Joining me here in Council Chambers tonight is Deputy Mayor Stephen King, Alderman Jan Dunsby, Alderman Angela Ryan, Alderman Peter Bull, Alderman Melissa Carlton, Alderman Kelly Sims, Alderman Sue Hickey and Alderman Simon Fraser, and the General Manager alongside me as well. And we have apologies this evening from Alderman Gay Richardson. I take this opportunity to make a health and safety statement in relation to council meetings. Glenorchy City Council takes workplace health and safety seriously, and this includes physical and psychological safety. We have a duty to ensure that a safe workplace is provided for our employees, elected members, contractors, volunteers and members of the public who may be present at council's workplaces. Council meetings form part of council's workplace, and it is expected that everyone who attends council meetings will behave in a polite and respectful manner, refrain from using offensive language or making personal statements, and not be aggressive, threatening or speak in a hostile manner. Any disagreement should be expressed respectfully, and during debate and in decision making, we must remember we are elected to represent and serve the people of Glenorchy and to make our city the best it can be. In line with council meeting rules, comments will be turned off for all online streams. It's not acceptable for members of the audience to call out their opinions when they attend meetings in person, so it's logical with streaming being our virtual chambers that the same rules apply to participation online. We have 16 items on our agenda this evening. Agenda item 1 is apologies, and as I said, we have apologies this evening from Alderman Gay Richardson. Agenda item 2 is confirmation of the minutes of the open meeting. We have a resolution that the minutes of the council meeting held on 29th of August be confirmed. Do I have someone to move? Alderman Ryan?
Actually, I would like to move an alternative motion.
An alternative motion, and what would that be?
To keep the first part, but to have 3 parts. So after the first sentence would be number 2, that the decision of the review of childcare service be published in the open minutes, and 3, that the General Manager's report on the childcare review be published as an attachment to the minutes.
The decision of the review of childcare service be published in open minutes, and the General Manager's report be published as an attachment
Yep.
to the minutes.
Yep.
Do I have someone to second that alternative motion?
Yeah, so we'll discuss
Deputy Mayor? Alderman Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wanting to move this because of a transparency. We'll note that in the questions, previous public questions taken on notice, that in answer to a question by Sam Batchelor from the Australian Services Union, the answer was that council may consider moving any decision into open minutes at the September council meeting. And I think that, as we have said, we may consider it. I think we should consider it. And I think that if we don't consider it, then it's not fulfilling our position as being transparent.
Thank you, Alderman Ryan. Any further discussion of the item?
Can I have a question?
Alderman Hickey, a question?
I'm always very nervous when something from the closed is transferred into the open, but I am a great supporter of transparency. The issue I have at hand is there were some details in the General Manager's report that I think are best left in the closed. And I think I would like an answer from the General Manager on his opinion on this.
Sure, General Manager.
Thank you. Just thinking back to the report, there are some elements that would be sensitive. So thinking particularly of
Staffing.
there was some stuff around staffing, some in terms of some estimated costs around the different options, and also I think that the area around the actual occupancy of our childcare centres would be a commercially sensitive issue. Apart from that, I think most of the other elements would be non-sensitive. So,
Can I just ask a question?
A question, Alderman.
I missed that little paragraph that the council may consider moving. I mean, I read it, but it didn't just resonate with me, may consider. If we've said, who answered that question then?
sorry.
The answer to the question, it's obviously the council may consider moving any decision open.
Oh, you're talking about Sam Batchelor's question.
And the answer to it, that's a council answer, isn't it? Council may consider moving any decision into the open minutes.
That's right. So this question was answered back just the day following the council meeting, but it was too late to be published in the agenda.
Yeah.
So typically what happens is council general manager drafts a response and I review it. So that's who's answered
So this
that
is the manager's
question
response
to
saying
Sam
that may
Batchelor.
consider. Right.
Or as the, I guess, questions on notice are effectively questions to council through the chairperson. So I review answers to questions taken on notice as well.
Okay.
So the second question, Mayor. So the very next day, the decision was announced. So I'm not really certain what Alderman Ryan's trying to achieve here. But I mean, I'm quite happy to have it recorded that the council supported the, what do you call it, reinvestment in childcare. But I'm still nervous about that report, as we haven't had time to revisit it again as to why it was enclosed in the first place. You know what I'm saying? It's, if we had a bit of, if Angela Ryan had let us know, Alderman Ryan, sorry, let us know in advance, we could have reread it, and then I would have been much more comfortable with releasing it.
Okay, so
But it is a confidential document.
so did you have a question, sorry, or are you speaking to the item?
Well, no, I think I need to put a question mark after that. Yes, so my general manager, did you announce the very next day with a press release that the childcare centre was continuing to operate?
Well, I'm not council spokesperson, but I'm aware that there was a media release the next day. So my recollection was that we had a meeting with the affected childcare staff on the Tuesday night. That was the earliest possible we could because of their working arrangements. And then we immediately communicated with families. And then I think a media release was issued around the same time. It might have even been first thing the next morning.
So my apologies, that should have been directed at me.
Yeah.
That's okay. So perhaps would it be appropriate if the recommendation read that the report be published as an attachment to the minutes redacted at the GM's discretion? So that the sensitive information that the GM has detailed tonight be redacted from the report in the interest of transparency to the community about the I guess, the considerations that led to the decision outlined in that report. But anyway, I open up to the floor for further debate because that was a question from Alderman Hickey. Alderman Paul.
Yes, I don't think you can release it unless you release the lot, unless you took your suggestion, if you can do that, and I wasn't aware of that, but I wouldn't have thought that you could release that into open council if it was enclosed.
I guess it's quite common for levels of government to release information that is redacted, so that it's, they'll have any sensitive information blacked out. Yeah, so that's what I mean by redacted. Any further discussion? Alderman Dunsby.
Unfortunately, I was unwell and couldn't attend the meeting, and I perhaps expected that there may have been a decision made to put some of the information into open council anyway, so it didn't happen. I'd be very supportive of that action, but I do share some of the concerns around the table about the report and what's in it. Again, I would like to read it fully before I felt that that was going to be released out for the protection of the information that's in there. It's not about hiding information. But if other people are happy with have a redacted version that's done by the General Manager out, I would be supportive of that. If it was just to release the report unredacted, I would probably vote against that without having the knowledge and the time to have invested in it to understand what was being released.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Dunsby. Any further discussion? Deputy Mayor.
So just a question, can I just get a yes, no then, General Manager? Can we do that then? Can we have a redacted version? Because we haven't really, I don't recall doing that. If we can, that's great. But for transparency's sake, because people always talk about transparency, so.
Yeah, so I'm not aware of situations where we've done it before, but bear with me.
Can I make a suggestion?
I'll let the DM finish answering the question. Alderman Singh.
It might answer this question, I think.
So it essentially says in the meeting procedures regulations that it needs to take into account privacy and confidentiality issues when considering whether to release to the public any discussions, decisions, reports or documents relating to the closed meeting. So essentially it's in the council's hands, that it's really a matter for the council to consider privacy and confidentiality issues in making that decision whether to release.
So does that allow us to release a redacted version? That's what I'm, because if that's the case, then that's great. But
It's at the council's discretion.
The
I
council's discretion.
think it's what
That's right.
Alderman Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Mayor, in light of that and just thinking about consistency of past releasing of similar information in a similar process that we've undertaken since we've been elected in, can we just make a summary report of the information we can release rather than messy blacked out information, actually summarise the information the community are hungry for and also respect our staff privacy and commercial sensitivity?
I guess that is
That's what we've done in the past.
that is certainly a worthy suggestion. I guess then the community wouldn't sort of be, wouldn't have any insight into what had been left out. Whereas if it's redacted, it's quite clear that it might be matters relating to personnel. So yeah, I think it's a great alternative.
Can we have advice from the General Manager on that suggestion, please?
General Manager?
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, that's certainly possible to make a summary. Both options are possible.
Is it possible to still reflect that chain of, I suppose, timeline that the Mayor is concerned about and ensuring that information is somehow communicated to a degree that we can?
Sorry, I don't quite
So it
understand
sounds like
the question.
the Mayor questioned my suggestion there around making a summary statement like we have in the past when we've released closed information and made sure that the commercial sensitivity and things like that were respected. So the issue is the Mayor has just suggested that having it blacked out will be more transparent. The community can see exactly where those are. So I was asking advice whether we can still be transparent around that timeline of events and that information within a summary.
It's certainly fair to say that our past practice has been, as a council, probably more towards that summary approach. But it really is in the hands of the council. If the council, as it says, what the regs are saying is the council simply needs to consider privacy and confidentiality issues. So
So you have no advice around which way is the best way to go in your experience?
In my experience, well, I guess what I've said to you is that both options are.
I guess I'll rephrase
From
my
a staff,
question.
from a staff perspective, the staff are able to do both. It probably comes down to the what the intent of the council is. If the intent of the council is simply to give a summary of what's been decided, it could be argued that it's already out there in terms of the media statement that's been issued and the letters that have gone out to families. The difficulty for me, I guess, would be deciding what's in and what's out. With going to the report itself, then all I simply need to make a judgment call on is what is either commercially sensitive or a personnel issue that is sensitive, because they're essentially the reasons for closing that part, that item last time.
I understand the difference between the two, and I suppose the question, I'll rephrase it a little bit, is I'm seeking your advice on, in your experience, we've obviously used the summary model better, or in the past, whether it's better or not, we'll have to assess that, measure that, but in your experience, since we have never released a retracted document like that for this purpose, what would be your advice around doing that, or a summary?
I've answered that a couple of times already. What I'm saying is that
You've said it's up to us, but I'm asking for your advice as a GM who deals with the operations and we need to manage this.
Yeah, and what I have said to you is with a redacted version of the report is already written, and all I simply need to do is to redact the areas that I've already identified earlier in the discussion. With a summary, I need to understand from council what are those things that I put in the summary and what are the things I don't put in the summary.
Understand. So just to clarify, you don't have a preference on which way?
I'm in the hands of the council.
But you don't. I'm asking for your advice as a GM through the mayor.
I don't have a preference. I can make both work.
Yep.
The only comment I would make is that I need more guidance in relation to a summary if it were to go down that pathway. I need to understand.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just seeking out risks.
I'm happy to support the amendment that's actually Alderman Ryan's amendment, but also your additional amendment, Mayor, to redact the document. I think that's the simplest solution. I trust the GM's judgment to be able to go through the document and black out anything that's commercially sensitive.
Thank you, Alderman Fraser. So I will just clarify, at the moment, the motion before us, as I wrote, is as per 1, and number 2, that the decision of the review of childcare service that the decision of the review of the childcare service be published in open minutes.
Yep.
And 3, that the general manager's report on childcare be published as an attachment to the open minutes. So redacted at the general manager's discretion would be what we'd need to add at the end.
Yep.
So the general manager's report on childcare be published as an attachment to the open minutes, redacted at the general manager's discretion.
Or in accordance with the Local Government Act?
Or I think at the general manager's discretion is what we've been discussing. I don't think the Local Government Act gives specific guidance.
Commercial sensitivity, that's what we've been referring to.
So I just need to clarify, because obviously the original alternative was moved by Alderman Ryan. So Alderman Ryan, are you happy with that?
Yeah, could we just fill out the point 2 then?
Oh, yes, sorry. So number 2, that the decision of the review of Council's childcare service
Be published in the open minutes.
be published in the open minutes.
Could we include the item number for true clarity?
Agenda item 22.
Thank you. Is that?
Yeah. So 2 becomes that the decision.
Yep.
Of the review of Council's childcare service. Yep. Report item 22 be published in the open minutes. Are you happy with that, Alderman Ryan?
Few grammatical,
That's all item
that
22
council, that
brackets.
the minutes. That's-
Oh, yes, that council, yeah, sorry, so, because it's that, yeah, because it's actually not the council, it's just in the agenda, it just reads that the minutes of the council meeting be confirmed. Yeah, so if we take out that council,
Through you, Mayor,
Yeah.
what I'd suggest, what we normally do with those that start with that council is that we start with a verb. So the council, 1, confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on 29 August 22. Publish in the open minutes the decision of the review of council's childcare service report, item 22. 3, publish the general manager's report as an attachment, redacted at the general manager's discretion.
take out the and there, just put a comma on.
Oh, that's right, and redacted.
Could report item 22 be in brackets as well to make that right in item 2 makes sense?
Just item 22 in brackets, yeah. In point 2, open minutes is said twice, so we only need it once.
Yeah, stops at item 22 there.
And item 1, you don't need to say confirmed twice either.
Welcome back to school.
Thank you, minute taker. Just trying to keep up with us here.
Okay.
Never too old to learn.
Okay, happy with that,
Okay,
Alderman
yeah.
Ryan? Thank you, and happy with that, Deputy Mayor, as the
Oh,
seconder?
yes, yes, I forgot that part, yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion on the item? Just Alderman Hickey?
This is more a statement that it's a very slippery slope to go down this path when the decision should have been made on the night. So after you make this decision at the meeting, you should declare then that you are going to publish it. We are in a situation now where we're going to be voting on something we haven't had a chance to refresh. We all know what happened and why this is coming forward. But so what I suggest to you is I would rather see it be reviewed by us and then put up live at the next council meeting, because we have not had a chance to reflect on what is in that report. So it's a very dangerous outcome to just willy-nilly say, well, that's it, we're going to publish a confidential report.
Thank you, Alderman Hickey. Any further discussion?
Sorry, through you, Mayor, under 3, as an attachment, should it say to item 22? Otherwise, you're not quite sure what the
As
attachment
an
is.
attachment to the minutes. Publish the general manager's report as attachment to the minutes, yeah. Comma. Yeah. Thank you, Director Richardson. I too will speak to the motion. I'm supportive of the motion in the interest of transparency. We've had a lot of comments and questions from the community in relation to the discussion and the information that council used to help inform our decision on the childcare review. So I'm really in support of releasing the report and the decision in the open minutes. I take Alderman Hickey's point. Ideally, yes, we do consider on the night any information that or decisions that we make, and consider moving an amendment that that information be published in the open minutes. I think this night in particular was rather a long one, and we had lots of discussion around the childcare. We did have an amendment to the motion, so there was lots of stuff going through our minds, and on reflection, you know, we ideally, yes, we would have done that, but we didn't. We got through the meeting the best we possibly could. And here we are, still with the capacity to make this decision in the interest of transparency today, so I'm fully supportive of it. There's no further discussion. I'll go back to the mover, who was Alderman Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing further really. I think we've had plenty of time to consider what happened a month ago. We've had a month. So I think the best idea is to do the redacted version. because it's clearly much easier for the general manager to just go through and redact it. So I'm supportive of that change. And in the interest of transparency, I think now is the best time, not kick the can down the road for another month.
Thank you.
So I think that's it really. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Ryan. I'll put it to the vote. Please raise your hand if you are for. That is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Not best practice, but we'll sort it.
Announcements by the chair. Item 3, there are none this evening. Item 4, pecuniary interest notification. Do any aldermen or staff present have any pecuniary interest this evening? No. Item 5, response to previous public questions taken on notice. We had a question on notice from Sam Batchelor from the Australian Services Union in relation to the childcare review and the decision, asking will council ensure a decision is made at the 29th of August meeting, considering the urgency discussed, and will council bring back to open session any resolutions of a council that occur in the closed session and the commissioned report. Also asking some questions about if a decision is not reached, what will happen then. And another question in relation to immediate and future plans council have to address staffing and ensure educators' health, wellbeing and mental health is protected. So a couple of questions there. Thank you to Ms Batchelor for those questions. The decisions are published in the agenda item, agenda papers there. Item 6 is public question time. We have 15 minutes for public questions. We had a question on notice from Ms Janice Bryan from Montrose in relation to the Whitestone Point infrastructure and whether it was transferred to council. So whether the $16 million worth of infrastructure that council has reported, whether that was cost was incurred by council, and the answer is council did not contribute any funds or resources to the building of the Whitestone Point infrastructure. Rather, subdivisions transfer infrastructure to council ownership once completed. Do we have any other questions in public question time for members of the public present this evening? Mr Alderton, I knew you wouldn't let me down.
Good evening, Mayor Thomas. Look, I did promise you I might ask a question tonight, but I apologise, I am, and it's not a very probing question. It's regard to your activities, actually.
Oh.
So, the Claremont community has shown great interest in the Claremont Primary School site and the Montrose Bay development. So I see on the 31st of August, you had the opportunity to meet with the Windermere Bay developer and architect. So I'm just wondering tonight whether you are in a position to share some detail or any detail regarding that meeting with the developer.
Sure. And
whether you possibly have any news for the community.
Thank you, Mr Alderton. So yes, the General Manager and Director Riali and I met with the developer and the architect working on the Windermere Bay development project. Obviously COVID has had a significant impact on the building industry and the development sector, and they have been reconsidering the scope of the project at Windermere Bay. So they really wanted to give us an update on just to say that you know, they haven't forgotten about it. They are still working on it, but they're potentially looking at a project that has a reduced number of dwellings compared to the original 315 proposed.
Right.
So that they will communicate with the community when they have more certainty around what that proposal will look like. But they, not in a position to disclose exactly what, and it's not for me to disclose exactly what they're sort of considering at this time. But the meeting came about because when we did our pop-up at Claremont Village, we got a lot of questions about what's happening at Claremont, and a lot of concerned community members, as you say, saying the site looks run down. Can't they at least demolish some of the dilapidated buildings? Can't council make them do that? And so following that, I wrote to the developer to pass on behalf of the community that there was this concern. People really want to see something happen at the site, and if they're not planning to develop it, you know, in the immediate term, can they at least tidy it up and demolish some of the buildings? So in response, he reached out and offered to meet, which was great in response to that letter. And that's when we found out what's happening with the proposal, and also he did give an undertaking that they will look into demolishing some of those dilapidated buildings in the short term.
Right.
So I think positive news for the community.
Definitely. Did you also take the opportunity to point out our concerns out there in regards to the fire hazard and the high grass and everything, and did the developer any chance given undertaking to address that?
Yes, yeah, I certainly did, and there had been a fire, I think a fire there just that weekend, and he certainly was concerned that had happened, and he is concerned about the community perception, and he wants to do something that, he wants to keep the community happy, so he did give an undertaking that they will maintain the site more proactively, and certainly we've issued abatement notices in the past to ensure that they do keep the grass down.
Right, which brings me to one other question now. So in regards to you mentioning that it's going to be a reduced development in size, shape, whatever, that would obviously need to go through the process of going back to the GPA, and obviously we go back through the entire process we went with the previous application. What does this mean for that previous application now? If a new application is submitted, does that mean that whole proposal is dead in the water and superseded? Because my understanding is planning matters don't have an expiry date, do they?
Recipients of planning approvals need to substantially commence works within 2 years of a DA being issued.
Right.
So effectively they have until March next year to commence works under the current planning scheme.
Right.
There's no building permit as yet, so unless applicants can apply for an extension.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
So my final question would be basically, so that original monstrosity, from my point of view, that was approved, if nothing occurs in a 2-year period, then that plan is over, finished.
Unless
Unless they seek an extension,
That's
of
right.
course, it can't go ahead. You have to go through the whole planning process again.
That's
correct?
right, and although if they do submit a new development application, one would expect that they wouldn't be following through with the original permit.
That would override the previous one, a new one, or not?
No, the other would still be valid.
For the life of the development plan. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mr. Alderton, thank you. Any further questions without notice from members of the public this evening? Nope. Item 7 is petitions addressing a council meeting through a deputation. Are there any, General Manager?
No, miss.
None. Item 8 is activities of the Mayor, and we have a recommendation that Council receive the report about the activities of myself during the period Monday 22nd of August to Sunday 18th of September 2022. Have someone to move, please. Deputy Mayor, someone to second. Alderman Ryan. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question. Thursday, 15th September, you met with Ministers Archer, Jensch and Ellis regarding antisocial behaviour and the need for a youth space. Did that go anywhere, or?
That meeting was a follow-up to the meeting I'd had with the Premier in the previous month or so in relation, following correspondence I sent to the Premier talking about the antisocial behaviour that we experience in the Glenorchy CBD and the need for reinstating what used to be called the Glenorchy Interagency Support Team, and ideally establishing a youth space, noting that since Pulse Youth Health Service moved to the Glenorchy Health Centre, we haven't had a youth space, and what young people tell us is they need somewhere to go and trusted adults to talk to. So that was sort of advocating to the government for some sort of partnership approach to addressing those needs. And so the follow-up meeting was to bring in other relevant ministers, Minister Jensch as Minister for Education and Youth, Minister Ellis as Minister for Police, and Minister Archer as Minister for Justice. Government's doing a lot of reform in the justice space, and so what we really wanted to discuss was that's at the more pointy end, where young people are already engaged in the justice system, where local government can potentially play a role in partnership with community organisations, and the government is in that early intervention space. So it was really just to sort of talk about ideas and any opportunities for funding to be able to support that sort of program. So in terms of outcomes, we haven't quite got anywhere yet, but we have also had, the Premier suggested that we meet with the PCYC, so we have also had meeting with the PCYC to discuss ideas and some of the models that they've been implementing in Bridgewater, Derwent Valley and Clarence with the support of the councils there. So still a work in progress, but certainly positive that the government is interested in working with us. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Alderman Sim.
Just like to make a comment around that. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I've been working in the last 6 months with some key stakeholders around this very issue. A lot of the community in my term have been coming to me with the same kind of concerns that council has and the community has around this. So I've been working with the strategic manager at the PCYC. He and I actually developed that model from the Bridgewater one to the Doon Valley Council together. So we strategically developed it from scratch basically and adapted it. So we've been working ever since for the last few years. I know they're lobbying Cosgrove High School and there's some potential around a site there. We've also engaged the principals of some of the schools, especially the schools that are tapping into those children that have more challenges. We've also got Relationships Australia involved, the footy club. Who else have we got? A few other people that represent some key cohorts that have been working in this space and been very frustrated at the lack of commitment from local government and other government levels. They really want that advocacy. So we formed this group to help support that advocacy. So it'd be great to get the Mayor involved and you could use that as a resource as well. We've got lots of priorities and things established and streamlined.
Great. Yep, I'd love to come to one of those meetings. Thank you,
Awesome.
Alderman Sim.
Thank you.
Any further? Alderman Dunsby.
Yes, I wonder if you could elaborate without breaching confidentiality, of course, the new owners of Claremont House.
Oh, yes, the new owners of Claremont House were very kindly invited me to meet them. They have recently moved to the municipality and I hadn't been to Claremont House previously, so
Oh, wow.
I know, so it was my first visit, which was wonderful, and they are really keen to, they're using it as their residence rather than as an accommodation or anything else, so they're really keen to support the community of Glenorchy, Greater Glenorchy, and sort of wanted my ideas as to what sort of community organisations they might be able to support and potential events that they might be able to hold there to get the community involved in and enable the community to also enjoy the house. So that was wonderful.
So as a private residence, they'll be hosting community events.
Potentially.
Fantastic, thank you. My other question is in relation to the 12th of September, you met with the manager of Dowsing Point Community Centre.
Oh, yes. So that obviously I have relationships with all of the community houses around our municipality, and this is one that I'd never connected with. So I thought, need to go and say hello. That is, as many of you are probably aware, is a specific community house that's specific for defence personnel and current serving defence personnel. So it's just really a meet and greet with the manager there to get an understanding about what they do and who they serve and the activities that they have.
I was a coordinator for 9.5 years, so that piqued my interest, so I know it very well.
Yeah.
And also just your meeting with Greater Glenorchy Neighbourhood Watch, what was the context of that
yeah.
meeting?
So I met with Peter from the Greater Glenorchy Neighbourhood Watch. We'd connected on a couple of different community forums, and he'd reached out to me to share some of the initiatives that he's promoting on Facebook. So it was really, again, just a meet and greet to hear about what he's hoping to achieve through Neighbourhood Watch, and a call out for volunteers. He wants to get volunteers to help him in his quest to get the community all on board to get involved in keeping us safe.
Thank you.
Just make a statement around that as well through the Mayor. I'm also quite heavily involved in the Greater Glenorchy Neighbourhood Watch Group. We helped establish it and had our first event recently. And it's not volunteers, he's looking for members at the moment. So don't scare people off, just members to get involved and help with that village kind of philosophy.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I thought all my phrases putting his hand up.
Oh,
I
no,
will go back to the mover, Deputy Mayor.
yeah, it's lovely.
I'll put the recommendation to the vote. Please raise your hand if you're for. That's carried unanimously. Item 9, Housing Annual Report 2021-22. We have recommendation that Council receive and note the annual report on action taken to progress its statement of commitment on housing. Do I have someone to move?
So moved.
Alderman Dunsby. Someone to second? Deputy Mayor, Alderman Dunsby.
Thank you. Yeah, I thank the council officers for providing the report. And I was interested to read and note the multiple languages in which the information was provided to us. Reinforced the statement of commitment on housing that we adopted back in 2020, and along with that we've been provided with a housing snapshot of Glenorchy to get an understanding of the experiences of people dealing with this very complex housing access market. Has been outlined in previous reports in this issue, the council's role is not as a housing provider, and there are other organisations that are best placed to have that input within our community. But we certainly work with them and partner with them to see where we can advocate. We know the full responsibility for housing sits with the bucket of money that's in the pocket of predominantly the state government and to a bit of a lesser extent the federal government as well. The report shows that up until 30th June 2022 that 61 planning permits were granted for multiple dwellings. We note that the approved developments were for 253 new multiple dwellings. They went from Chigwell to Claremont to Moona, Glenorchy and Moona. I was pleased to hear today that work has started on 4 of those 5 projects that are listed in the report. There's also work going on in the strategic planning area to support increased housing supply and density. We know it's a slow process, much slower than we'd all like it to be, but we've been briefed on this through council and certainly understand the complexities of these opportunities, particularly along the transit corridor. I've also released numerous sites that have been owned by council to be developed over time. Back in our March meeting, we had discussions. There were 2 properties identified for potential disposal in Glenorchy and Rossons Ferry. The report also goes through, there are some complications with those, but staff are working through it and hopefully they'll soon be available as well. The report clearly indicates we've worked as an advocate in partnership with organisations through the Greater Hobart Homeless Alliance, the Social Housing, Community Housing and Glenorchy Local Government Association, and also through the Hobart City Deal, which are in the report. So it was pleasing to hear that that advocacy is continuing. We also talked about our contribution to the Homes Tasmania Bill and the Tasmania Housing Strategy. So I'm sure staff will continue those engagements and push through to progress the housing opportunities for us in Glenorchy. As a member of the Glenorchy Planning Authority, we had one matter before us recently which has been discussed in the public arena. Those in attendance will realise it was not an opportunity to slow down or stop the availability of social housing. In fact, the discussions on the night were just exactly the opposite, to show how supportive we were, and just we had some conditions that we wanted to make clear. It's a process when you sit within the planning that you can only accept or reject something and not perhaps send it away or ask for mediation, and that's certainly a process we've all talked about and said how difficult it is, and it may be addressed in the future with the reviews that are happening in the wider state government area. We also, sorry, I've lost my spot there in my notes. So there's a potential there that this project will soon be sorted out. Obviously, I haven't spoken in the public arena about it. I've waited for the due process to go through. We do have a special meeting on Wednesday night, and so things may be more clear on that particular issue at that time. I do believe that council staff are genuinely committed to find every opportunity to progress housing availability within the city of Glenorchy. This report certainly reflects the efforts that have been made, partnerships, the engagement, the advocacy, and we hope to see even greater opportunities going forward in the next 12 months. We'll see more of our land released and hopefully more state government money available for those projects to progress much faster. I found the document a really interesting read. I ask anybody who's interested in housing to take the time to read it. There's lots of interesting facts and figures and information in there. It gives you a good understanding of what's happening here in Glenorchy and the role the council can play. Happy to also throw it open for a discussion around the table. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Dunsby. Any further discussion of the item? No further discussion. To echo Alderman Dunsby's comments in relation to the work that council is doing. Obviously, we accept and understand the need for additional housing, and that's why we have our statement of commitment on housing. That's why we are trying to identify land surplus to council requirements and doing what we can as a planning authority to make sure development occurs in a way to address the housing supply, but also in a way that is acceptable to the community and development in a suitable manner. So I too support that we receive and note this report and thank council officers for the work that they're doing in this space. No further discussion. I'll go back to close debate.
Thank you. There's no doubt that everybody sitting around this table has the same view. This is a hugely important issue. And I have no doubt that those who will be elected to the future council that we'll see sitting around the table from November will have that same view. They'll continue to lobby and advocate through the automatic rail and their personal one. To see significant moving in the provision of housing, but predominantly social housing, which we welcome in our community.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsby. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. Please raise your hand if you are for. It's carried unanimously. Moving on to item 10, updated council policies. We have a recommendation that council rescind the 2017 telecommunications infrastructure on council property policy set out in attachment 1. Have a mover. Alderman Ryan, someone to second. Alderman Fraser, Alderman Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. This is pretty straightforward. The recommendation is just to rescind the council policy on telecommunications infrastructure on council property. There are other council instruments that cover the same subject matter, making this policy redundant. And as we are in the process of streamlining all these policies, I support the recommendation to rescind this policy.
Thank you, Alderman Ryan. Any further discussion? Anything to close debate, Alderman Ryan?
No, thank you, Mayor.
I'll put the recommendation to the vote. Please raise your hand if you are for. That's carried unanimously. Item 11, Financial Performance Report, 31st of August 2022. We have a recommendation that council receive and note the financial performance report for the year to date ending 31st of August 2022 as set out in attachment 1. Do I have a mover for this item? Alderman Fraser, on the second. Deputy Mayor, Alderman Fraser.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a lot to say really. It's very early in the financial year, so it's very difficult to make too many concrete projections about where things are going to be by the end of the next financial year, but it's looking good so far. As noted in the report, $1 million better than the budgeted position for August, so that's good news. And that's made up of a variance of 877,000 increase in revenue and about a $200,000 decrease in budgeted expenditure. But apart from that, it's a pretty uneventful sort of financial report at this point.
Thank you, Alderman Fraser. Any further discussion?
See, Tina's not excited about that. Not eventful.
Someone's got a hard question for me.
No further discussion. Anything to close debate, Alderman Fraser?
No, thank you.
I'll put the recommendation to the vote. Please raise your hand if you're for. It's carried unanimously. Item 12, Procurement and Contracts Monthly Report. We have 3 recommendations before us to receive and note the Procurement Contracts Monthly Report for 18th of August to 16th of September. Note the Minister for Local Government's letter dated 9th of September 2022 advising that Council's reporting obligations under the Ministerial directions are now complete, and approve reversion to exception reporting to Council of procurement exemptions below $250,000 in accordance with Clause 28J of the Local Government General Regulations 2015, noting any exemptions above $250,000 require explicit council approval. Do I have a mover for this item? Alderman Dunsby, someone to second. Alderman Ball. Alderman Dunsby.
Could I just start with a question first, if I may? Through you, potentially to the General Manager or the Director. So the item that's been asked to be approved this month, it's not actually legal fees, it's actually a filing fee. I'm just wondering why it's actually sitting here to be approved as legal fees. I know it's possibly been charged by a lawyer or something like that, but does it actually need to be reported here, is my question.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsby.
Through me, I have to take that on notice and go back to our, I'm assuming it's because it's come out of a legal services account.
You know, the report tells us it is a filing fee, so it's not legal fees.
Yes.
And our reason to report this is to report legal fees. So I just wonder whether we do need to actually report on it, which would change the way this recommendation, it would change what's in the report. So I'm not quite sure how to handle that.
Still be a legal fee for filing.
Through you, Mayor, could I just clarify? So the there's still an obligation under our legal services policy to report monthly on legal fees. So unless that was removed as part of any future review of the policy, we still have to report on those legal fees on a monthly basis. So it's simply the change that we're seeking here is simply to move from month by month reporting on procurement exemptions to reporting on an exception basis. In other words, if there is an exemption, we then report it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. I don't have a problem with that. I was just querying the item that we have before us this month is technically a filing fee, and it's described in the report whether we actually need to be approving that. I don't see any harm that we do, but I just wanted the item clarified, and as you said, you need to take it on notice. So if there's a clarification, it can be fixed next month.
Yeah.
I think we're only receiving and noting anyway, rather than approving Alderman Dunsby, so
Sure.
I don't think it makes a material difference.
Fine, thank you.
But thank you.
Other than that, speaking to the report, I'm happy with the recommendations that are there. I believe that the information provided to us has been clear and concise, and the reasons that are there. Noting the obligations under the ministerial directions, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the efforts around that were huge, and the impact were predominantly on our staff. And I'd like to thank the staff for all the efforts that they've put in to meet those. We sit here and approve them each month. They've had to do the hard yards behind the scenes, and I don't think we even can appreciate the hours that have gone into that. So, my appreciation for the work that we've got to that point. We're now a council that's best placed around its governance practices going forward because we've got all those that we've now met. So, thank you. I'm happy to open it up for others to discussion.
Thank you, Alderman Dunsby. Any further discussion? Timms.
Just a question, it could be to you even, to the Mayor or to the GM. You just mentioned we're just receiving and noting, but we're voting for the 3 recommendations up. That is to receive and note, to note, and number 3 is to approve the reversion. So we're going back to old practice in accordance with the Local Government Act before we had all the issues.
Yeah, that's right. But with the specific fee that Alderman Dunsby was referring to, we're simply noting that fee, that expenditure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman Carter.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question about the figure that's in the report for a piece of software called Manage Engine Software. Just wondering what we use that software for, if that's an annual fee and that would have been a budgeted expense.
Through you, Mayor. My understanding is it's mobile device management software. I might just check. So that is essentially software that enables us to I guess manage security and access to mobile devices in the organisation.
I think we've seen the reason why cybersecurity is a bit of a priority for organisations, and that's obviously something that was in our budget, though that's an actual budgeted expense. Yeah. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I too would like to refer to the completion of the reporting obligations under the ministerial directions. It's been a significant piece of work, as Alderman Dunsby has said, and is a significant achievement of council to have implemented all 56 of those ministerial directions over the last 4.5 years since we were, or most of us were originally elected this term back in January 2018. We came in with the gift of the ministerial directions, and the GM and executive leadership team were tasked with working with us to implement those, and that required significant amount of effort and I guess will of us as a council to work collaboratively and constructively in response to those ministerial directions. We know that demonstrating good governance is crucial to building and establishing, maintaining the trust and respect of the community, and certainly that's been something that we've been working really hard at over this term of council, and long may that and this demonstration of good governance continue into the future, into this next council that will be elected very soon and beyond, because we've seen the damage that dysfunction can do. We've seen the cost, and that $1 million cost that a Board of Inquiry report can bear on the community, and the time that it takes to rebuild that trust and to get the organisation functioning at a productive level again is quite significant. So thank you to the staff who have worked hard on that, and thank you to my fellow aldermen for being committed to working constructively together in accordance with the ministerial directions to get council back on track. Any further discussion? Going back to the mover, Alderman Dunsby. Nothing further. I'll put recommendations to the vote. Please raise your hand if you're for. That is carried unanimously. Item 13, notices of motion, questions without notice. Are there any?
My question is, Mayor, we're at the end already.
Nearly?
Mayor, I'll just bring to your attention that under the caretaker policy, council is committed to not submitting notices of motion or asking a question without notice at a council meeting.
So there are nil. Thank you. That brings us to the end in record timing of our open council meeting this evening at 6:56 p.m. Do I have someone to move that we're going to close council? Moved, Deputy Mayor, someone to second, Alderman Ryan. Raise your hand if you're for. Alderman Fraser, you move for going to close. Yep. That's carried unanimously, and yes, closed at 6:56 p.m. Thank you to Mr. Alderton Steenbergen for joining us this evening. Thank you to members of the public who have joined us online. Stay safe, be kind, and we will see you for our October meeting, which is on the 24th of October, a week earlier this year, to allow for the election on the 25th. So 24th, Monday the 24th, we will see you then.
See you then.